So the pragmatic people in Lebanon are the ones that are targeted throughout history. It takes guts to be where you are.
If Hezbollah decides to assassinate me or anybody else to that effect, then it is God's wish. But that will never stop me from continuing the process. If the Americans and the Israelis, they attacking Iran, what is it in for me? I was not part of this process. Why should I be taking Lebanon into a confrontation with Israel for something that I have nothing to do with it?
Right now, Lebanon is stuck between an internal militia called Hezbollah, a neighbor that's brutally leveling villages, and multiple countries wanting influence in that little nation.
This resistance, so-called resistance, Al-Muqawama, Hezbollah, Syria, and all of this in Iran, from 84, they hijacked Lebanon. And what did we get out of all of this? Destruction after destruction, billions and billions of dollars. For what? For causes that had nothing to do with Lebanon. This is not my problem.
Mr. Makhzoumi, it's a pleasure to speak to you. I'm glad you're in the UAE and Dubai to be able to do this in person. And the reason I wanted to do this interview is, everyone I spoke to when it comes to Lebanese matters, your name, people in the US and Europe, your name is the one that came up most of the time as potentially the new Prime Minister of Lebanon, the new leader of the country. And, I was intrigued. And then I started looking at the statements you make on X and the position that you have when it comes to Lebanese matters. They seemed very pragmatic. I related to them. And I was really keen to have this conversation in person. So first, I appreciate you making the time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. For me, Lebanon, no matter where I traveled in the world, and no matter what success stories I have in the world, I'm referred to as the Lebanese, who's working in Australia, United States, and this. So I am a proud Lebanese, and I would like to see if I can make Lebanon a better place for my grandchildren and children.
I'll ask you more of a personal question before we get into the political matters. Is why, I looked you up, incredible background, congratulations on your success and your wealth. But Lebanese politics is one of the messiest and most terrifying things one would consider. Now, I remember years and years ago, there were a whole wave of assassination attempts. Right now, Lebanon is stuck between an internal militia called Hezbollah, a neighbor that's brutally leveling villages, and multiple countries wanting influence in that little nation. You're jumping straight into it. It doesn't add up. Why would you do that?
Look, after you succeed in business and you've done all the philanthropic work that we do and helping all the people. I lost my son in 2011. And for me to bury your son, which is against nature because it should have been the other way around, you have to rethink, what do you want in life? Is it wealth? Is it success? You need to then, my grandchildren came to me and they said, what would you like us to go? Go back to Lebanon or stay in London and Dubai and all of these places? I figured the only way that I can encourage them to go back to Lebanon, like what my generation was all the time aspiring to go back to Lebanon, is to make sure to help Lebanon to be a better place for them to live. So I decided to be involved in public life. So I ran for elections 2018. Against all odds, everybody was betting that I would lose the elections because remember, I was betting against the whole deep state, in totality. And then I ran back in 2022. They delayed the election results 30 hours in order to fix it, but yet I won. And we started working with all of our colleagues in the parliament and in the political class. They think like us, in order to work together to present a platform for the world to see that Lebanon is not what is perceived, that it's a deep state. It was Hezbollah, Syrians, and all of this. There are true Lebanese that would like to live in peace in the region and to live together with our neighbors. Okay. 2018, it was the big event, as you know, when at that time there were all kinds of issues that were going on. There was, everybody's talking about the financial collapse that happened in 2019.
So that's when the the currency just completely collapsed. The bank, all the money was frozen in the banks.
From my point of view, since 1994, and if you go back to media, I cautioned the Lebanese people and I cautioned the government that their plan to start issuing Eurobonds when they started having difficulty in order to attract capital into the country was the wrong policy. Everybody looked at me at that time saying, you're not a banker, that's why you're against them. No, because I operate in 50 countries around the world and I've seen the failure in other places. And it was a typical roadmap for collapse. And this is what happened in 2019.
Most people don't know the currency collapsed by what, 90-something%?
95.
95% collapse of the currency.
Remember,
Money frozen in the banks.
in the year 2000 and in the year 92, our exchange rate was 700 Lebanese pounds to the dollar. We hit 141,000.
Jesus.
So you can do your calculation.
And money was frozen in the banks as well, correct?
Well, let's go back to what happened. Normally, if I give you a check for $1,000, you should go and deposit in the bank. The bank will send it to the central bank, who will then forward to the corresponding bank in New York in order to be cashed in, sent back to the account for you to able to give me the bank. What happened in 2002 when we were running short of cash and we're starting from 1995-96 issuing Eurobonds, the deep state, and this is I'm talking about everybody without naming names, they decided to create their own dollar exchange rate in their central bank. So they were taking your money, dollar, fresh cash. They will print enough Lebanese pound at the fixed exchange rate of 1,500. So everybody was happy to spend the Lebanese pound when somebody was accumulating the dollars to be spent into areas which just had nothing to do with the Lebanese economy. That's why we had the
hold on.
collapse.
When you say deep state, so Lebanon is known to have, and for anyone that's not aware, it's just such a crazy story. The same politicians that were involved in the multi-decade civil war, either them or their kids are running the country right now, decades later. Some of them is the exact same people. Most of the politicians are in the age of 60, 70, 80. I think one of them is even in the 90s. So it's literally the same faces as the civil war. So that's number one. And most people want change in Lebanon. They want to turn a new page, but they keep voting the same faces again and again. And you're saying that they played a role in the collapse. So it's corruption that played a role in the collapse we saw a few years ago?
Lebanon is a unique model. You have a mafia protected by a militia, managed by a deep state that is running at that time, and hopefully now we are seeing changes. They're managing the security apparatus and the judicial system. So these are the two tools that we can intimidate any citizen, if you are part of the deep state, to make sure you do not go and complain about the status quo. And that's exactly what happened. You know, the day of the collapse, and I was in the parliament in 2019, whereby when the banks shut down, you know, and it has never happened in any country around the world, we were arguing, and the deep state was arguing, whether the collapse was $140 billion or $118 billion. And that, you know, theoretical argument delayed issuing a capital control until today. So they allowed the system to continue functioning the way it used to be in order to siphon all their money that they had illegally accumulated outside the country.
How did they keep getting voted in? How do they keep getting voted in?
You see, in Lebanon, it's a unique system. The word citizen of Lebanon is actually, it is citizen of Lebanon, comma, and then you add another, you know, pronoun against it, whether you're a Sunni, you're a Shiite, you're a Druze, whether you're part of the system or that system. We've created, unfortunately, in Lebanon, okay, and this is, I say we, because unfortunately most of the Lebanese voted for the same people, as you said, Ola. So we all helped to create a situation whereby your allegiance is not for the state. Your allegiance is for your religious leader, who, as you rightly said at the beginning, used to be a militia leader during the Civil War. So we ended up people looking at their militia leaders to go to school, to have medical health, to try to get an operation, to get a medicine, or to be forced into the government in a job. After the 2018 elections, okay, and as you know, at that time there was a decision by the government not to hire. There was a freezing on all hiring. We've realized there were thousands of people that were hired illegally, but they were hired by the government, but under different pretexts and under, you know, classes of employment. Thousands of people that they were used in order to elect this political class in 2018. So it means the deep state really runs the government, runs the country. Because, unfortunately, from the days of the Syrians going through Hezbollah and until we have the last elections of the President On and the Prime Minister Nawfal, really the deep states controlled the judicial system and the security system. And these were the two intimidating factors for all citizens. And then when you see that the only way you can survive in Lebanon, get a medical check, get a medicine from the Ministry of Health, or to find a job, is through your political leader, you tend to just go blindly and vote for them.
They've ingrained themselves into the system to a level where the people became dependent on them.
Exactly.
So
and not on the state.
Yeah.
And this is where, during this last crisis that we're going through, in the Makhzoumi Foundation, we insisted that we will help. I mean, Beirut, roughly, we help half of the refugees that are in Beirut. But I insisted that I function under the flag of the state, not as a Makhzoumi Foundation alone. Because historically what happens, whenever we have a crisis, people will tend to, the political class will divide all the resources they have to the religious leaders so that the services in a specific region will be only offered through the religious leader.
Wow.
So this is what happened in 2006, and this is what happened in 2023, 2024. So people do not look at the state as the provider. They look at the individuals as a provider. And if you look at it from 2006, it was all on the streets going down to the south. Thank you for individuals, not thank you for the government for rebuilding or to trying to provide all the services.
And in terms of these religious leaders or sects, Hezbollah being one of them, and it's the most powerful one militarily, one of the bigger ones as well. But in Lebanon, there's multiple groups,
Right.
multiple religious groups, and they're all part of the problem, based on the explanation you've given. They need to be under one flag instead of being under a sect or a religion.
Hezbollah basically is a mafia and a militia at the same time. Corruption, smuggling, money laundering, drug trade, it's all controlled by Hezbollah. So Hezbollah is a unique situation that it was allowed in 1984 to start under the so-called resistance to liberate the South. But tell me, what have they achieved?
Didn't they start as resistance? My position, and please correct me, you could start as resistance, but then get hijacked and then become something else.
The resistance in Lebanon was started in 1982 when the Israelis invaded Lebanon, in Beirut by the Sunnis, by the Communist Party, by the Druze, by the Christians. The resistance from 82 to 84, it was across all factions. They were part of the resistance against the Israelis. In 84, the Iranians and the Syrians decided to hijack the word resistance to eliminate everybody else and to allow it only Shiites. And that's when Hezbollah.
Oh wow, it was hijacked. I thought it was hijacked later. It started, there was resistance in 84 and then got hijacked. You're saying it got hijacked from 1984?
It was designed by the Syrians and that's why there was Amal, there was Hezbollah, and a few others. They said there is only one resistance, which is Hezbollah. And that was not.
So the resistance, so that's a really important point. Everyone treats it as fact that Hezbollah started the resistance against the Israelis. You're saying no, Lebanese people started the resistance before Hezbollah even existed.
Correct.
And Hezbollah just became part of it and was a way to hijack it.
He hijacked it all. And it's a fact of life. And worse than that, see, in 92, when we tried to incorporate the Taif Agreement in our constitution, we said what is now perceived as the 1559, 1701, the 2024 agreements, and the latest one, that all arms, the monopoly of arms, should be in the hands of the government. They and the Syrians were smart enough to redefine Hezbollah not as a militia, but to define it as a resistance. And then it was accepted by everybody that the law does not apply to them. So that's why in 92, when all the Christian militias and everybody handed over their arms, they kept it. And they kept growing and growing and
What
growing.
year, sorry?
1992.
1992, there's a lot of militias that had, because obviously Lebanon's been through decades of civil war. There was a lot of sectarian groups, religious groups, militias that had weapons. They all gave up their weapons except Hezbollah because they were portrayed as resistance.
a resistance, not as a militia. Now, if you're not part of the government, you do not listen to what the government says. So I don't know, anywhere in the world you will call it a militia.
Well, it is a militia. I think that calling it otherwise is just being disingenuous. So we share that stance, but I'm going to challenge it because there is a different perspective, people with a different opinion in Lebanon, and one that is not, it comes from a logical point. Is Israel is an aggressor. Israel has done horrible things in Palestinian land, especially in Gaza, and in South Lebanon in the last few weeks, they started replicating what they're doing in Gaza. So I was always in the stance that Hezbollah needs to disarm immediately. And then I saw what Israel started doing a few weeks ago in South Lebanon. I'm like, okay, this has shifted from justified response to from Hezbollah, who was attacking them, to potentially a more sinister agenda that could be annexing Lebanese land. And that is the fear of many people that also oppose Hezbollah. But they're worried that without Hezbollah, there is not, because who's fighting Israel in South Lebanon now? It is Hezbollah. But who's responsible for Israel being in South Lebanon? It is Hezbollah. So you understand the tricky part is that there is some logic to the argument that Hezbollah is acting as resistance, as well as justification for Israel.
I will tend to disagree with you, but let's take you back to history. 1949, we've signed an armistice treaty with Israel, the Republic of Lebanon and the State of Israel. And from 1949 to 1967, there was not a single conflict across the borders. Israel was there, Lebanon was there. So if we take that period and build on it, what changed after 1967? When Lebanon was forced to bring the Palestinians in 69, 70 from Jordan to Lebanon, and to allow them to create a militia which was defined as resistance at that time, whereby it was not under the government control. That's why we had the so-called Palestinian camps, which is up to date. Still, they have a status. That was in 1970. Now, the Syrians came. Syrians made a deal with Israel for the Golan Heights. Not a single conflict happened across the borders in the Golan Heights in 73. And they started everybody using Lebanon as the ground field in order to combat each other to solve their issues.
I agree.
That was the Syrians. Then the Palestinians. Palestinians were removed from Lebanon because they are not Lebanese. Syria took over. 1559 was implemented.
Took over as in invaded Lebanon.
1559, okay, was issued. 2005, Hariri was assassinated. Syrians, Hariri was, according to the International Tribunal, it was Hezbollah.
Hezbollah, yeah.
So it's very clear. And up till now, which I'm surprised with these politicians that they claim that, that it's, that they would like justice. Nobody even demanded that the government should at least issue a warrant in the names of those that were indicted by the International Tribunal. So we are living into a schizophrenic approach in Lebanon. Okay. In one hand, we claim we would like judicial system to be free and to try to protecting the citizens. Yet on the other hand, we see where the perpetrators are, but we do very little to try.
But what can the government do? You're talking about a military significantly more powerful than the Lebanese military.
I'm a Lebanese citizen. If I'm going to listen to that type of argument, I should pack and leave Lebanon. I cannot live in a country that basically I pay my taxes, I respect the law, I'm expecting the government to protect me, yet I have to accept the principle but they cannot do much about it. So we need to start changing that mindset and saying, no, if we have a state, we should take the risk of giving total control to the government and to the armed forces, whatever it takes. And this argument about civil war and civil conflict is only a language which is used by Hezbollah. Tell me, how can you have a civil war, when 90% or 80% of the people are with the government, and Hezbollah are members of the government, that they have been witness to all these decisions, yet they revolt against trying to respect the decisions of the government. So this has become a coup d'etat. It's not anymore a civil war.
Again, there's not much I disagree with, but there is a question. We are where we are because of the history you've just gone through. Hezbollah plays a key role in why Israel is attacking Lebanon. We agree 100%. But we're here. So Israel is in South Lebanon. They are leveling villages. How do you know that Hezbollah has kicked Israel out of Lebanon militarily in 2006? Again, they were the reason. Is that wrong? Didn't Israel invade Lebanon because of Hezbollah, but then Hezbollah kicked them out?
No.
In 2006, the war.
They did. We reached an agreement, 1701. So they did not kick them. Israel was all the time still in Lebanon. You see, the problem is that we'd like to create a situation that we would love to live in a fantasy land. What happened in 2006? Hezbollah kidnapped an Israeli soldier. It triggered an attack by Israel into the Lebanon. Hezbollah and the Iranians thought that they can win, like everywhere else, because for Hezbollah, if you don't die, then you're a winner. Okay, that's their argument. Okay, so we entered into the 1701 based on the request of Hezbollah. Israel did not want to stop in 2006. All the deep state of Lebanon tried to help Hezbollah to try to achieve that deal, which we did. Okay, what did we do from 1701 till then? We kept this building and building and building all their infrastructure, arming themselves in the south of Lebanon. Okay, and they needed a triggering effect, which is not Lebanese. For the 2023, if you recall, what is it for? To try to support Hamas in Palestine? What did that support do? It triggered a total disaster, and they have wiped out Gaza. Is that something that that helped the Palestinians or the Lebanese? And then in 2025, 26, what did we do? It was publicly said that Hezbollah is reporting to the Revolutionary Guard. Remember, the chief of the Revolutionary Guard saying, we and Hezbollah are working in tandem in order to attack Israel.
Oh, it's clear. It's clear.
So in that case, in 2023, we supported the Palestinians in Gaza for a non-Lebanese cause. In 2026, we supported Iran for a non-Lebanese cause. And you would like me as a Lebanese to accept that these are resistance? This is an Iranian militia, Revolutionary Guard, infiltrating Lebanon, run by the Revolutionary Guard in order to bring Lebanon to destruction.
Again, I agree, and I genuinely mean it. I agree. I just think both are not mutually exclusive. I'll tell you what I mean by this. The Gulf was dragged into the war with Iran, which we'll talk about in a second. They were dragged into this war, and they were really upset at the US, at Trump, making that decision unilaterally and dragging the whole region into this war. But then they face a new reality. They're like, all right, we are where we are. The US made the mistake of dragging us into this war we can't get out of, and the US can't get out of. But now we need deterrence against Iranian aggression because of what the US did. And unfortunately, some countries see the US, and the UAE sees Israel as well, as part of that deterrence. Okay? So they faced the reality that was created by the US, but also the US was part of the solution. And my concern, and by the way, I still think Hezbollah should be disarmed, and that's a very clear position. But the tricky position is Hezbollah created a mess they should never create again. But a lot of people worry that Hezbollah could be the only group that can sort the mess they created. So I'll explain just a tiny bit more. They offer justification for Israel to invade Lebanon and level villages. But if Hezbollah does not fight Israel now, Israel will annex territory in South Lebanon. That is the argument that a lot of people are making.
If we look back from 1967, where the whole conflict started, after, where the Palestinians came to Lebanon and all of this, there is the annexation, as the term that you're using, that is under dispute today is the Shib'a farms. But Shib'a farms, historically, I could not see any document to prove that sovereignty is for Lebanon. See, owning a piece of land, owning a farm, I know I own a house here. Does it mean that this has become a sovereign Lebanese state? Owning properties in Shib'a when it was under the Syrian control, okay, doesn't mean that it is a sovereign Lebanese state.
I'm not talking about Shib'a farms.
Let's start. The only thing that we have clear dispute is Aggressor, which is half of it is Lebanese and half of it is Syrian.
Is that in the Shib'a farms?
It is outside the Shib'a farms. So this is, I understand. And they have taken over the north of Aggressor, which they say that we have taken it over. So it means, today, if I'm going to be saying that what are the disputes between me and Israel, it is land dispute. And it is the maritime dispute. But remember, Hezbollah instigated and they pushed the Lebanese government in 2023 to sign the maritime agreement. It was Hezbollah that was negotiating indirectly with Israel.
Really?
Of course.
Why did they do that?
Because they realized that economically Lebanon is going down. the only way forward is to try to start stealing and spending future income from the revenue of the oil. That's why they agreed to the maritime agreement. But in order to justify keeping their arms, they refused to integrate the demarcation between land and the maritime. So they insisted from that famous rock, B2, you remember, it's about 20 meters from the beach. There is a rock saying this should be the point from which we have to do our maritime work. They wanted to keep it out in order to justify there is no more dispute in land between us and Israel. So there is a justification for their arms. Look, from 1973 onward, every single government we had in Lebanon did not enforce enough money and allocate enough budget for our army to become strong. Why? Because every time this deep state wanted to justify the weakness of our armies in order to allow people like the Syrians, people like the Palestinians, people like the Hezbollah, that you need that additional force to protect Lebanon. Now, we just had, as you know, the debate for the budget, which I voted against it. I asked a simple question. If we have committed to the international community on 27th of November, 2024, that we will be implementing the 1701 in totality, we're going to be disarming Hezbollah.
1701 is the disarmament of Hezbollah.
Yeah. So my question is that, shouldn't I be giving the army as a priority in order to be in a position with capabilities to implement that commitment? We didn't.
What did they say?
No, they're saying we don't have money. But should go and you should help us and all of you to make sure that people will help the army to implement the 1701. Now, once you get into that cycle, it means you're admitting to the world that you don't have the capabilities of doing it. So my question then is that if we want to implement it, then let's strengthen our army. Let's make sure to do it. But when you have Hezbollah publicly saying, we're not willing to listen to anybody, I don't care if you have taken the decision. In that case, it's not anymore a question of resistance or not. It's not a question of Lebanon. This is becoming a question of a group trying to do a coup d'etat against the state.
I don't want to debate that because I agree. And I want to just move away from the point on whether Hezbollah should exist as a military group. No. It's making the argument for yes is just so illogical that it's not worth a discussion. No government, there's no country in the world where there's a state within a state and the country does well. There's no other example.
But Mario, all of us internationally, we're making a very distinction between something called military Hezbollah and political Hezbollah.
You don't make a distinction?
No.
How?
Hassan Nasrallah in 1984, he said, we are members of Wilayat al-Faqih. We are soldiers of Wilayat al-Faqih.
What does that mean?
It means Wilayat al-Faqih is a religious concept in Iran, after Khamenei came, whereby it is a state and a religious concept. So it's not anymore that you can be both. It means you are an Iranian, effectively. And he said, our money, our training, our food, our education is all from Iran. If that's the case, if you are Iranian, in that case. So as far as I'm concerned, and for me as a Lebanese, it means you are not accepting that you are a Lebanese with an affiliation of Iran. You're saying, I'm fully owned.
I agree.
So if that's the case, why should I be allowing them to exist even as a political party? This is one. Secondly, 27 November 2024, we've signed an agreement with Israel for the cessation of hostility, and it was the first time the Republic of Lebanon signed an agreement with Israel, not like 2006, whereby it was cessation of hostilities between Hezbollah and Israel. Now, if that's the case, then in 15 months, whereby we did not implement fully the 1701, they recreated themselves because of corruption, stealing, drug smuggling, laundering of money, and we've seen the results today because everybody was telling us in 2024 that Hezbollah lost 70% of their armed forces. Well, obviously they haven't. This is one. Secondly, even Hezbollah was saying publicly through their leaders that we are regrouping and we're trying to reposition ourselves, but we did very little to make sure that we stop it from this. So the financial arms, the financial part of Hezbollah and the security part of Hezbollah are very important to dismantle them the way that we want to dismantle the military side.
If Hezbollah agree not to receive funding from Iran, because I think a political party should not be funded from another country. It's illegal in most countries for that to happen. If they agree for that to happen and they disarm, can they then be a political party?
You have the port of Tripoli. You have the borders with Syria. You have the crypto money that's coming from Iraq and from Turkey. No, it's not enough. We need to make sure that you want to operate as a Lebanese. You cannot be associated with Iran.
I agree. But then they can exist as a political party.
But we do not have the judicial system yet and the security apparatus to make sure that this is not done. So promises, paroli, will not accept it. So they have to be disbanded. They can ultimately go back to playing politics in Lebanon. But at the moment, the fact that they've taken us to wars against Israel all this time, they have to be disbanded.
But this is I understand where you're coming from, and it's a logical argument. I never considered the funding from Iran because a country cannot function, a democracy cannot function if there's other countries, political parties acting at the behest of another country, even if they're not a military group. So I understand that point. But there is also the counterpoint that they do represent a big percentage of the Lebanese population. A lot of people in Lebanon support them. They see them as their representatives and they want to vote them in. So shouldn't your position be, don't dismantle them, but they need to stop receiving funding from Iran, and the Lebanese authorities need to establish that, enforce that, and to be disarmed. These should be the solutions instead of dismantling them completely.
They have to be disarmed totally.
Yes.
Before we consider anything else.
Agree.
Which they are refusing to do. So the question is that, do we go along with them, with their logic, that no, you need to win against Israel, you need to make sure that you will get Israel out of there, and then we will willing to disarm. But we've seen that before for the last 40 years. This is not a cycle that they're willing to play with. So it means we need to be, look, when you're saying that they represent a whole majority of the Shiites, I'm not sure. Okay, because definitely very few Sunnis and very few Christians, they will support Hezbollah. Now we have a situation that we have a government, we have a president, that the majority of the population is supporting them. But I would love to see the government and us making sure to offer the reconstruction of the South, to try to offer a livelihood for the South, not based on subsidies and corruption the way that they were doing it.
You need to change the system.
You need to change totally the system, and so that they can feel they do not need to go to Hezbollah, they can come to the state. And that will be the right step, the step in the right direction in order to build the Lebanon that we all would like to be in.
But so what happens with Israel? Because you talked about previous diplomatic solutions with Israel, but that was different administrations at different time to what we have today. The Israel today, look what they did to Gaza. And there's another example that will be similar to what Lebanon's going through, and that's Syria. Syria is weaker than ever. When Syria was more powerful under Assad, you wouldn't see Israel decide to bomb them whenever they feel like it. And then we saw what happens right after Assad fell. And now al-Shara is trying, you can like him, dislike him. He is trying to unify Syria. And, he got the endorsement of Trump and other political leaders around the world. Yet Israel decides to bomb Syria and offer any justification that has nothing to do with Israeli security. And they're still inside Syrian territory. So how do you know if Hezbollah is disarmed that Israel won't do the same thing in Lebanon?
The only entity that can actually guarantee that is the United States of America. The only country that can pressure a deal and make sure that Israel will respect is the United States of America. It's very clear. Because now what Netanyahu is saying, Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying very clearly, I'm waiting for the green light from the United States of America. Now, let's take that a step further. If today, and this is the first time in the history of the Lebanese-American relationship, I have a president that he brought the ambassador of Lebanon and the ambassador of Israel into the Oval Office to say, I would love to help Lebanon, but I would like to see that you're willing to live in peace in this region. If we were now to go to the President of the United States and say, we're willing to go along with you, we're willing to go for peace, I would like you to guarantee for me that if we start this process of strengthening the army and moving south to try to take over from the Israelis, that you will guarantee that Israel will withdraw and then Israel will respect that agreement.
But they couldn't guarantee a ceasefire in Gaza. Gaza's still getting attacked. And Syria.
Mario, I'm a Lebanese. I do not want to get into discussion about Gaza or Syria.
But you have to look at them to see if you can trust them.
For me, I trust the United States of America. If what President Trump is saying publicly, why should I be challenging it? That's not correct. He is saying, I'm willing to support you. Actually, the tweet from the embassy a few days ago saying, if you were to actually implement the disarmament, if you're willing to live in peace in the region, we are willing to give you all the support that you need. Why would I, as a Lebanese, challenge a statement by the Embassy of the United States of America based on a position of the President of the United States and say, I don't trust you?
Why?
As far as I'm concerned, until proven otherwise, I believe that's a very important statement. Let's put it to the test.
Okay. You said unless proven otherwise. Well, they've asked Israel to stop striking Syria. Israel has not abided by US request there. They've asked Israel to stop striking Lebanon. Now I'm talking about not the last ceasefire, the one after Iran. They're still striking Lebanon.
No.
Before Hezbollah attacked.
No. The 27 November 2024, everybody heard about the so-called the appendix to the agreement. Now, people say, but we haven't seen it, but it was leaked all over the place. It says that there will be a ceasefire between Lebanon and Syria, south of Lebanon and Israel. South of Litani, they have the right to move, bomb, anything they feel is against their
I'm not
national
referring
security.
to, I know. The one before.
No, listen. And they said, as far as north of Litani, they've created a so-called mechanism that is supposedly coordinating with each other, whereby the Israelis will inform the Lebanese army that we believe there is a threat in point A. The army should move there to investigate. And if there is a threat, then they have to make sure that it is non-existent, and then we can move forward. Twice the Lebanese army attempted to do that in Dahi. Twice they went to investigate. Twice Hezbollah forbid them from entering these places. Twice Israel bombed them, and there was all kinds of weapons that were stored there. So I'm not defending Israel. I'm defending Lebanon. That's all what I'm interested in. But we have a mechanism that if we put it to the test, then I agree with you. If it is proven to be wrong, I'll be more than happy to say that we were tricked into that. But if we are refusing because of Hezbollah to be implemented, how could I make a statement that I don't trust the Americans or the Israelis if we are not willing to implement what was given to us as a way out in case we want it?
I think I still think my point is valid, but I think your response is also very valid. So my point is there should be concern. Because I wasn't referring to the 2024 ceasefire, I'm referring to the one now after the Iran ceasefire. He's asked Israel very clearly in very strong terms in a Truth Social post
He
not to
said
strike.
surgical intervention. The term that President Trump said, surgical intervention. Now, I'm not a military man, so I don't understand
No,
what that
they're not
means.
striking Beirut. So yes, the ceasefire is active, you're right. The bombing now in Lebanon is very different to what it was during the Iran war. So that is accurate. Israel's still advancing in South Lebanon, so that's where the lack of trust exists.
But Hezbollah is still firing rockets.
Sure, they're still fighting, and there's counter-argument to be made. Syria is more clear. Al-Shara is not attacking Israel in any way. He's trying to improve relations between the two countries, and Israel seems adamant on doing the opposite and destabilizing Syria. So there is, I know it's not Lebanon, but you understand the people that don't trust Israel, and what you're saying is that we don't have any other solution. The only option we have on the table, it could be once in a lifetime opportunity, is the one that Trump is offering. You said it may not work, but we have no better option. The alternative is to maintain the status quo, but that has been disastrous for Lebanon.
Exactly. Look, if today the only option we have, I have a proposal from the United States of America through the president and through the embassy, which saying we are willing to give you all the support to rebuild Lebanon and to be, to live and to have a reconstruction of this island. What choices do I have? I would like to use that option to put it to the test. But Hezbollah is saying, I don't care what the government does, or they are willing to be discussing with others. I'm not in agreement. So the question now is not anymore that there is an alternative that we're discussing. It's a question that now Hezbollah is saying, I'm out of the state. I'm not willing to implement what you're putting, and you have no choice but to listen to me. We're not ready for that.
You know how I told you, what if you said, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, and I'll own up to that. I'll own up to that position. But there's also consequences to being wrong, because if Hezbollah is disarmed, okay, and there's a new administration after Trump that is a lot more supportive of Israeli foreign policy, and Israel remains as hawkish as they've been in the last few years, and Netanyahu maybe remains as prime minister, then being wrong could be very dangerous for Lebanon, because you can have an Israel that remains in South Lebanon for another 15 years and then calls it Israeli territory.
Mario, I understand the hypotheses that you are presenting, okay, and it could be true. But as a businessman, that I have to take decision on a daily basis, if I see a bad investment and I try to fix it once, twice, and doesn't work, you have to move on and find a replacement. Today, Hezbollah attempted from 1984 till today to so-called, attack Israel, destroy Israel, liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque, and all of these things. What have they achieved out of the zero? Actually, in 2006, let's look about the latest history over the last 20 years, 2006, 2023, 2026. We've destroyed our country to the tune of about $40 billion. For our GDP today is under $30 billion. We don't have money, we don't have cash, we're not paying salaries. And yet I'm going to be accepting the logic of so-called resistance because I don't trust them? Look, I'm a businessman. Give me a proposition that I can live with.
No, I don't have a better one.
You see, the Syrians in the Suq al-Hamidiyya, in the old souks in Damascus, all these famous and rich traders, they used to give me some coins to put it in my pocket so that I can shake them so people think I have money. Give me an alternative. Give me coins to shake.
No, this is the issue.
So when you do not have an alternative, okay,
I'll give you
I'm
one.
not going to be arguing that I don't trust them. I have the first time in our history a president that he will be there for the next 3 years saying, trust me, I'm going to do it. So why don't I give him the chance and see if I can save this country?
Do you think Hezbollah should be militarily, their equipment, should they be destroyed or given to the Lebanese military?
Actually, for me, I don't care as long as they do not have them. I'm willing to accept what the Lebanese forces did in 92, 93, whereby it was sold, it was whatever you want, sent to Yugoslavia, send them back to Iran. I don't care.
And
this
make
is not
money
my
off them.
decision.
Okay.
I don't want to be part of that process. This is really tools that I don't need in Lebanon. They need to be taken care of. See, in Lebanon, we are not an offensive country. We're not a warring country. So I don't need long-range rockets and all of this. I would like to maintain my borders. I have 2 countries that they surround me. 85% of my borders are with Syria, which we wish them best of luck. I believe President Shara, I hope that he will succeed because it's in my interest that things are settled in Syria. I hope I can live in peace with Israel so that I can start exploring my oil and gas, in the offshore work. And this is all what I'm interested in. What is really pending between me and Israel? Some detainees, the border demarcation, maritime demarcation, okay? And then to live happily ever after. Is there anything else that we're not in the process today of normalization, of trying to change. We would like to live in peace. Then it's people to people decision what they want to do. But in order to achieve that, I need to make sure to take a very bold decision, which is basically disbanding and stopping that law that existed in 1955, that started as a commercial boycott that has been used by the deep state as an intimidation process against all the Lebanese, saying if you ever be seen that you're communicating with the Israelis, then you're becoming a traitor.
That is such a stupid law. That is such a
This
stupid
is
law.
a law
Just
that-
for the audience, it's a law in 1995 that literally makes it illegal for any Lebanese
More
person
than
to talk
that, you can be
talk to an
tried
Israeli.
with the death penalty. This is how bad it is.
Death penalty?
Of course.
Who passed
Now,
that law?
Remember, the deep state, in 1955, it was during Abdel Nasser's time and all of this. Remember, the deep state, the beauty about the deep state, the beauty, it's the wrong term, The strength of the deep state is that they are fixed and they're willing to bring in outside players to cover them. It was Abdel Nasser, the Palestinians, the Syrians, Hezbollah, and unless we really try to disband the deep state, they will find another source somewhere. But hopefully now, with President Aoun and Prime Minister Nawfal, we think that they will not be allowed to function the way they used to be.
Just I want to go back to that the stupidity of that law. Russia, Ukraine can talk to each other. Syria and Israel, from what I understand, they are talking to each other, if I understand
More
correctly.
than that, Iran and the United States are talking to each other. I mean, this is the big Satan.
Exactly.
Okay. And Syrians have met with the Israelis more than 6 times, undeclared. Okay. And nobody talked about it. You see, I'm advocating that this law should be disbanded. Okay. Now, In order to revoke a law, you need the parliament. I don't believe we have the majority today to do it, okay? But I hope we do, and we will be pushing for that. But there is the right of the Minister of Justice to suspend that law. Because imagine, since we started the 2024, okay, this agreement, there was the mechanism. So we have generals sitting in the same room. We have ambassadors, Simon Karam was sitting with the Israelis. We have now our ambassador in London, in Washington. Twice she met with the Israeli ambassador, and now it looks like there is a third meeting, okay? Yet the law exists. So, what are we saying? Are these people are going to be tried for treason?
It's a stupid law.
So it has to be revoked, because if we do that, and people feel more comfortable to exchange ideas, this will start the confidence building process between the two nations, okay? Irrespective whether you want to normalize or not. We need to start building the confidence building process in order to allow people to start talking to each other. Okay, fine. The president may or may not go to Washington now. What if we disband this law? We can allow people to be communicated with. We can ministers to be talking to.
Hezbollah does not want to see that law disbanded,
yeah, but
I guess.
You see, unless we force this process to take place and break that taboo publicly, Hezbollah is winning. And the question, who gave Hezbollah that veto right over all of us? It's the deep state.
What do you do if Hezbollah goes back to what they did 15, 20 years ago, whenever that was, and start assassinating Lebanese politicians again?
Mario, all of us have taken the position to be in public life. In the Middle East, specifically in Lebanon, this is a cost that you have to pay at some point in your life if you want to play that. Because we do not have a strong enough state to protect you. The question you as an individual, and you asked me the question at the beginning of this talk. Why did you go into this? I told you because I would like to provide a better Lebanon for my grandchildren. It is a risk, I know. I'm threatened all the day. 2 days ago there was a tweet. Basically they attacked me and they said, we can get rid of you. If you're going to be standing behind every single reaction like this, might as well go and live in the mountains somewhere in a monastery and stop dealing with public life. This is a cost that exists. This is a cost that we all may have to pay at some point. We hope we don't have to, but I don't think that, at least from my point of view, I will never be stopped. I will continue pursuing this piece of, the route for peace.
Do you think Israel, there's a lot of people are worried that Israel's trying to instigate civil war in Lebanon, and they do benefit from it, having weaker neighbors. From a military strategic perspective, it makes sense for any country to have weak neighbors.
Mario.
Especially if those neighbors are aggressors.
Today we have Hezbollah revolting against the government. They're deciding they kill anybody they want or go through their history. Who wants a civil war? Hezbollah wants a civil war. Media?
Israel wants civil war. That's the argument.
But who is the media in Lebanon that advocating, if you challenge Hezbollah, it will go for a civil war. If you try to disarm Hezbollah, you will go for a civil war. If you're going to be allowing direct negotiation, you'll have a civil war. It's Hezbollah. Tell me, which other media besides Hezbollah that is actually doing this propaganda? No other media outlet.
I'll ask the question again, though. Do you think Israel wants civil war in Lebanon or not?
As far as I'm concerned, I don't know what they want, but I haven't seen, based on the statements that they have made by Netanyahu, he's saying, we have no long-term intentions for occupying Lebanon.
Yeah, you can't say we trust Netanyahu.
I'm not saying I trust, again.
But then why bring up his statement? We know he cannot be trusted.
I'm not here to agree or disagree. I'm telling you what I read publicly.
Yeah, but you can't mention someone that lied a million times and has proven to be a liar time and time again. Mentioning his statement is a bit futile because you have to look at the actions instead.
But the beauty about countries that they have elections, proper elections, that these things will change. They have elections coming up in October at the latest, okay? Polls do not show that he's going to be forming a government. So we need to move on and then try to see what is good for us and try to instigate a better communication with the other parties to make sure that we can come to a reasonable agreement.
There's one thing I'm really... How do you solve for this? Israel is still in South Lebanon, and South Lebanon is being leveled. So we talked a lot about the Hezbollah issue. How do we solve that issue as well?
Remember, our people in the South, this is not the first time, this is not the second time, and this is so many times before. They trusted that we're going to be building peace in the region. We enter into a war. They lose their homes. They lose their livelihood. They lose the future of their children. They're kicked out of their homes, and then we were then trying to see if we can help them to go back. We need to have a proposition whereby these people can realize that they are Lebanese first. Their responsibility is the government. The government should be the one that should be taking care of them and all of this, and not to allow people like Hezbollah to be infiltrating their villages in order to use them as human shield against Israel.
So there is the other issue in South Lebanon. We've talked a lot about the Hezbollah issue, but Israel is still in Lebanese land and they are leveling villages. Now, I'm not saying the infrastructure used by Hezbollah, which they've justified to level, but people's homes, restaurants, entire villages being leveled.
But
How do we solve for that issue?
Mario, if you noticed over the last 2 weeks, there were 2 Christian villages that they were definitely against Hezbollah. They would not allow them. They were infiltrated by Hezbollah and they started launching rockets from there against Israel, which Israel reacted to that. So instead of trying all the time to have the blame game on one side, it works both ways. Israel is definitely trying to level the region, and already where they had 5 hills that they were occupying, now we have in excess of close to 70 villages that they're occupying, with an excess of 1.2, 1.3 million people from our south that are living outside their homes. They cannot. It's
crazy.
Now, so it takes 2 to tango. We need to make sure that, Israel will not be given any more chances by Hezbollah in order to destroy, but we need also to give the people of the south, our Lebanese citizens in the south, a reason not to allow Hezbollah to infiltrate them and to use many human shields, and to try to give them the alternative. It is the state that has to be controlling the security and the arms and all of this. So we need a comprehensive plan to try to do that in order to bring back those Shiites that have been hijacked by Hezbollah over the years, whereby they're telling their livelihood is tied into us, to show them that their livelihood and the livelihood of their children is tied in to the state, and to try to develop a more...
It goes back to the original issue you mentioned. It's allegiance to the state, not to the sect or some whatever political leader.
And remember, in Taif agreement, one of the main pivots of Taif agreement is that we need to move away from the religious
Taif
sectarian.
agreement was in
1992. Well, we signed it in 1989, but it was incorporated in the constitution in 1992.
And that was, just very briefly, the agreement was between which countries for what purpose?
Well, no, it was the Lebanese among ourselves to stop the civil war.
Okay.
But it was sponsored by Saudi Arabia in Taif. Okay, that's what's called the Taif Agreement. They've done fantastic work to support Lebanon all through the years, and they continuously have been supporting Lebanon pre-civil war and post-civil war. And definitely they're doing a great job.
The Gulf countries, they've said openly they were happy to invest a lot of money into Lebanon, but the fundamental issues in the country need to be resolved. If they put money into a leaking bag, that money is just going to go into the same political leaders that have hijacked the country for decades.
100%.
You can't expect them to put
all
money in.
what the Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries have been telling us: take control of your state, take control of your army, take control of your security, take control of your judicial system, and we will be more than happy to step in. But as you rightly said at the beginning, you can have a state within a state that basically has the veto right. Why would a Saudi allow their citizens to fly to Lebanon if they cannot guarantee their transport from the airport to their residence and to their hotel? This is not acceptable.
Yeah.
So we need to move forward, and I believe all the world, including mainly Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, are willing to step in. But
To reconstruct South Lebanon?
to reconstruct all of Lebanon. You see, remember, our peak of our GDP before the collapse was around $54 billion. Okay, at a growth of about 2-3%.
In what, before the 2019 collapse?
2017, 2018. In 2018, Saudi Arabia offered us 22 agreements, joint agreements, trade, security, and all kinds of things. If we would have agreed to, and if Hezbollah did not forbid and force the Prime Minister not to agree to, that could have helped us to go from 50 billion to 100 billion GDP. We didn't, because one of the key issues was the security arrangement and the coordination to stop Captagon export to the Gulf, security issues, terrorism and all of this. And Hezbollah made sure through the deep state to tell the government at that time you cannot do it. Now, these people we'll be more than happy to help, but we need the United States, because if we do not disarm Hezbollah, if we do not have Israel to withdraw from south of Lebanon and to establish clear borders and agreements to live in peace, This is the only country that they can force Israel to do it is the United States.
Yeah.
So you need the US on one hand, you need the Gulf and Saudi Arabia on the other hand. That combination definitely will be the future and the savior of Lebanon.
No, you asked me earlier, is there any other options as a businessman yourself, any other alternative? Because you know, it's very easy, and I hate someone, whenever I work in business as well, I hate people that give you all the problems, but they don't give you solutions to it. That's one of the things that drives me the maddest. And you're saying the same thing to me now. He's like, Mario, this is the solution I see, to be honest, the only solution. And as you're speaking, I'm trying to think of an alternative.
See, look, in my business, where I operate in 50 countries, every day you're faced with decisions that you have to make. Yes, your emotions could be that you would like these investments to continue. You would love to give it support. You can try. But at the end of the day, numbers, they don't lie. Facts don't lie. You have to look at it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You need to have to find the alternative. This resistance, so-called resistance, al-Muqawama, Hezbollah, Syria, and all of this, in Iran, from 84, they hijacked Lebanon. And what did we get out of all of this? Destruction after destruction, billions and billions of dollars. For what? For causes that had nothing to do with Lebanon. Whether it's with all our love to the Palestinians, and we would love them to have their own state and to have, but this is not my problem. I would love to support them, but not at the cost of destroying Lebanon. This is one.
Yeah.
If the Americans and the Israelis, attacking Iran, what is it in for me? I was not part of this process of attacking Iran. Why should I be taking Lebanon into a confrontation with Israel for something that I have nothing to do with it? You might like Israel, you might hate Israel. It's not my decision. I would love to live happily with Syria, with Israel, with Cyprus, all the countries that are around me. It is in my intentions to protect Lebanon and to live happily ever after with these people. Now, you love them enough to have to normalize with them. This is people to people. We've seen it what happened in Egypt. From 79 till today, it is a Cold War peace between Israel and Egypt. Look what's happening in Jordan. This is not up to me to decide. I would love to secure the future of our children and our grandchildren and let them decide how they want to do it. But it is my duty to secure the tools whereby they can live happily in Lebanon, peacefully, they can plan their future. Look, you're living here in Dubai. There are over 150,000 Lebanese. Officially, it's about 80,000, but the reality, because a lot of Lebanese, they have dual citizenship. 150,000. Multiply it by 4, each family minimum. You're talking about 600,000. That's 1.5% of the population of Lebanon. Why are they working here, not in Lebanon? Because there are no opportunities in Lebanon. They cannot raise their children within a safe environment that they can make sure that if their children go to school, they will come back at 4 o'clock at home. We need to change that mindset. We need to create a situation that people think as Lebanon as a destination, but a destination based on reality, destination based that we are going to be working with normal international standards. We're going to be working with place that you can go and invest in Lebanon, and you know for sure that the law will protect you and protect your children if you decide to be there. This is the type of Lebanon that we would like to work for.
It's funny, it's like the arguments that you're making is like something that's very basic for any country. I want to live in peace and coexist with my neighbors, like the most basic thing in geopolitics. And somehow it's like a taboo in Lebanon. Or it's even illegal in Lebanon when it comes to Israel. Like the rest of the world listens to what you're saying and is just mind boggled on how this isn't the norm in a country like Lebanon and how messed up things are for that to be part of the law. A final question I want to ask you is, you've made all that argument and we've talked a lot about Hezbollah. I think there's a meeting between the president and Netanyahu in Washington. If you went there, for example, and you sat there with Netanyahu privately, what would you tell him?
Obviously today, we don't have any confidence between both countries. And anywhere in the world, even in business, even in politics, even in social, you need to build confidence. Otherwise, there is no point, because you're starting with two silos and there is no way you can bridge. The only way forward, we need to start explaining. Israel is a neighbor of Lebanon. You might agree or disagree. That's a fact of life. This is history. God created it, that we are neighbors. Okay, so we're not there to argue why or why not. We have two populations that they are industrious, they are successful, they can know how to function within the international community, except that we waste our energy killing each other for things that today I don't understand. What are the pending issues between me and Israel today? Detainees, some land that needs to be sorted out, land demarcation, maritime demarcation. On the other hand, Israel is telling me, but okay, that's fine. But you have a group that's refusing to be in compliance with your government, which they have signed with us in 2006, 2023, and 2026. And you would like me to trust you. Why should I trust you? So we need to start with confidence building measures, whereby we have to get a commitment from Netanyahu that he is willing to withdraw from Lebanon, okay, to make sure that Lebanon has total sovereignty over the 10,452 square kilometers, but against which we need to offer Netanyahu also steps that will guarantee that we are willing to deliver on what we are going to be promising, which has not been the case so far. Because Hezbollah, irrespective of what the government, whoever government was there, refused to comply with the decision, even though they are members in the cabinet and they have members in the parliament. So we need to start explaining to Netanyahu that we have the intentions of trying to build confidence between you and us, and we need to, you show me what you can do for me so that I can comply and see what I can do for you so that we can come to a middle ground, that you can live happily with me and I'm living happily with you without having to eliminate the principle of conflict. Now, to be able to do that, we have at least to show the goodwill from our side. True, today we are not able to disarm Hezbollah, but there are certain things that basically we as government should be able to do without having to go into that military side. One, we need to revoke that 1955 law that exists. Because once I do that and I allow the Lebanese to communicate, that will create some trust. And then ultimately, what does it hurt to start looking about trade relationship between two countries before we get to the political side? One. Secondly, the issue of the meeting that's happening today between, we need to start to doing more of that and trying to be having a much more than just a
meeting between Lebanon and Israel.
Absolutely. Okay. And then to try to do that. Thirdly, if you cannot, as an army, say today I can confront Hezbollah south of Litani, I proposed, as you know, on the 16th of April, the famous conference that I did in Beirut, disarm Beirut and make it a Beirut arms free. This was based on an op-ed that I published in The Economist on 22nd of March, that basically it took a lot of traction. And President Trump actually mentioned it in the last meeting that we need Beirut to be disarmed. Okay, so what we are telling the government, you need to show the goodwill. You cannot keep saying, it's too complicated, I cannot do it, I don't have the means, I don't have the arms to do it. In Beirut, you should be able to do it. Before the conflict in 2018, 2019, we have 2 divisions in Beirut from the army, okay? Now, 5 divisions were removed from the south and they are in barracks. Send me 3 to Beirut. Make sure one controls the Dahi in and out, at least to make sure that
the Dahi, the Lebanese,
which is the southern district of Beirut.
Which is a Hezbollah stronghold.
Let's make sure that to this, because technically this is what we promised the world, that there will be no more transfer of arms. Let's show it in Beirut. Forget about the south now. Let's do it in Beirut. Let's make sure to forbid arms from in and out. And then, according to the agreement in 2024, we've created with Israel the so-called mechanism, which is a tool, a platform that the Lebanese and the Israelis, under the American sponsorship, sit in one room and they can discuss things. And the mechanism is there to tell us. Israel will tell the mechanism, I believe there is a threat in this building. The army has the right to go and investigate, and if they can diffuse that threat, technically Israel will not bomb. So why not start it in Beirut? Save Beirut, save the destruction that's happening. But you're saying that they're planning to level it off. But let us make sure to show the world that we're willing to cooperate with the Israelis and the mechanism to stop this from happening. And if we can do that in the East District of Beirut, then let's do that in Beirut itself. And let's see more people. This nonsense that, yes, we are in control of Beirut is not true. We haven't seen except very minimal structure of army that is there in order to protect the resident of Beirut from any potential conflict. If we can do that, start with Beirut as the capital of Lebanon, show that we can deliver, sit down with Netanyahu saying, look, we've done it where we could, we need more help in trying to disarm Hezbollah, but show me that you are willing to try to withdraw if we are going to be compensating and moving forward, and let's build.
Because if Netanyahu withdraws in return, that removes the justification for Hezbollah to exist.
But we want to make sure that they don't keep the arms so that they don't bring
Exactly,
us back
and then when Israel pulls out, then trust could be rebuilt with Israel and their intentions, and the Lebanese people will start to understand, okay, Hezbollah is not resistance, Hezbollah is hijacked our system instead. So that's why it's like something is done on the Lebanese side, Israel has to reciprocate, and that's how trust is gradually rebuilt.
Once we do that, then once we get into that stage, then we can then assist the government to rebuild the South. And this is one of the issues that I've been working on with an international group, that we will be putting the fund in the future, okay, to try to raise enough funds in order to develop the South, okay? And this we can talk about in some other time. But, it is our intention is to create that opportunity, but it will be based in creating a future and creating a livelihood, not just building walls. Building walls in Lebanon since since the 2006, you're building walls waiting for the next crisis to destroy it.
2006 war, you're saying building wars or walls?
Walls.
Oh, you build houses and then another war comes out, levels
So
it.
we want to make sure that we build a livelihood, a future for these
You
children.
solve the problem rather than putting band-aids and getting it destroyed
Because
again.
what's happening, every time we build a wall, okay, it means we're preparing ourselves for the next crisis.
You know what's funny is that when I researched Lebanon's history, the pragmatic people are the ones that, and I know that might sound distasteful, but I'm speaking my mind. It's like the pragmatic people in Lebanon are the ones that are targeted throughout history. So it's a concern, it takes guts to be where you are. I think your solution that you've come up with now, as we've gone through it and I've challenged it as well, I can't come up with a better solution, but I just worry that the people that want to hijack that solution, try to sabotage it. But look, I hope it works. I really hope it works.
For my grandchildren, I've done what I can, and I will continue doing what I can to make sure that they have a better future. If Hezbollah decides to assassinate me or anybody else to that effect, then it is God's wish. But that will never stop me from continuing the process. You cannot step into this historic moment whereby we have a golden opportunity with President Trump to move things forward and then be scared and to back off. This is an opportunity. It is a dangerous opportunity. It is a tough opportunity. I believe it is our duty as patriotic Lebanese that would like to develop Lebanon that we need to continue with that.
Mr. Makhzoumi, thank you so much for your time. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you, sir.